Do you dream of adding your very own book to the collection of books that have already been written? Do you wonder where to start or how to finish? Does the idea of writing a book seem too overwhelming? Do you just want to polish up those writing skills or stay motivated? Do you wonder what to write about? Everything you need to help you write, stay motivated, and self-publish your own book is right here on one channel. And why? Well, because it's time to get over the writer's hump and just do it. You can write anything. Yep, you can write a book. Hello and welcome to a book. I'm so happy you are here. You know, on this channel, we like to talk to authors who maybe are new to writing, or maybe they have a little bit of experience. But today we have a very special writer for you. His name is Cam Torrens, and Cam is here from Colorado to talk to you. He's going to tell you a little bit about his books, and he and I are going to have a wonderful conversation about writing so that you can learn a little about the writing process. Cam, welcome to a book. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Laura. I'm really excited to be on your show. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yes, I was so excited when you reached out to me, and once I started taking a look at the books that you've written and your website and everything, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a great guest. So I'm really excited that you are here today. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you are from, how you became a writer, all of that good stuff.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I'm a retired Air Force veteran. I spent 30 years in the Air Force as a pilot, and then a diplomat in China, and then a
Wow.
university professor for my last assignment. I was working with the ROTC out of Virginia Tech,
Oh
and
boy.
I retired from the Air Force. I took a little 3 or 4 month retirement gift from my wife and hiked the Appalachian Trail. After
Ooh,
that, we
fun.
lived in a motorhome for a year, and we ended up settling out here in Colorado. I'm
Oh boy.
out in the middle of the Rockies, and I handled not having a job for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months pretty darn well, and then I started getting itchy for trying to find
Hmm.
my purpose again, and that was when I got into writing. I've always written. I wrote, in high school and college, papers and stories, but not so much in the Air Force. I was writing more about the strategic use of C-130s for
More
in-
technical stuff.
inserting airdrop, all that type stuff. So, uh, and but one thing that didn't change for my 30 years in the Air Force and growing up is I've always, read somewhere between 80 and 100 books a year.
Oh my
Just a huge,
goodness.
just a huge reader. And
Wow.
I was sitting out here in about January of 2020 saying, I want to try to write a story similar to the ones I enjoy so much, which are mostly thrillers, suspense, psychological suspense, that type thing. And that was the start. I had no idea that I was choosing the month before COVID really came down to start my
Oh,
endeavors. So
oh
that
my goodness.
that kind of helped. But I dove right in, and that was when I started writing. Was in January of 2020.
Okay, wow. Well, you and I have a few things in common. My husband and I also traveled. We traveled out of the United States and lived in Israel for a while. And when we came
Uh-huh.
back, we also lived out of a camper for about a year and a half, our fifth wheel camper for a year and a half until we could kind of decide where we wanted to land on a more permanent basis. So, yeah, yeah.
That's quite an adventure.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it was good. It was a great experience. I don't really have anything negative to say about it other than our camper didn't have a bedroom door and we worked opposite shifts of each other. It got to be a little nerve-wracking,
Right.
but yeah, it was a good experience. So, first book you ever wrote, what was it?
Well, the original title of my first book was Runoff, and I called that the original title because it's been in the top dress drawer for the last 3 years after
Oh,
receiving over 50 rejections on it. While receiving the rejections, I started on my second book and kind of moved on from there. I had written 3 books by the time I finally got a publisher to contract me for one. So, but the reason I say it was originally titled Runoff was because I just signed a contract on January 9th for that book, which I've since rewritten to be a prequel to my Tyler's On series. So it will come out in February of
oh,
2025.
that's
So,
pretty exciting. Okay. So So here you were kind of trying to figure out your purpose in life. You read a lot of books and now you wanted to try your hand at writing. Was there anything inside of your brain that said, I can't do this?
I'm a little bit one of those stereotypical pilots thinking that, oh, well, if you teach me how to do it, I'll be able to figure it out and I'll be pretty darn good at it. And that was how I approached the writing thing. I had been pretty successful with that in my Air Force career, although I did find that when the Air Force told me I needed to become fluent in Mandarin Chinese, that I found another thing I had problems with. So
Oh, yeah,
I,
yeah. I don't know. How did you do with that? Did you pick it up pretty well?
Uh, I ended up being fluent as a third grader in China that was born and raised in
That's
China,
amazing.
probably would be.
Wow. Wow, that is incredible.
No, but
Oh
I
my
joke
goodness.
that a lot of my interactions in China were with like Chinese Air Force pilots and stuff. So a third grade level of conversation was perfect for pilots.
Oh.
But
Is there a lot of humor in your books?
there's a bit of my main character is kind of a self-deprecating type of guy, and so there's a lot of humor. My kids call it dad humor, but
Oh
a lot of
boy.
that type of humor in it. So
Well, tell me a little about your writing process itself. Like, do you have a schedule that you write on? Do you write when the mood strikes you? Do you set goals for yourself? What is your writing process like?
I'm a pretty type A person as far as lists and trackers and to-do lists and everything. So I definitely have a process. It's evolved over the past 4 years, but initially I set myself up on a schedule where I could write a book a year. And
Oh boy.
what that involved was I would come up with the idea for the book. I would outline the book. And then when I started on day one, I would write 1,000 words a day, no matter what, for 100 days.
Oh
And
boy.
I've got kids and a wife, and life happens. And so
Right.
I was looking for a 90,000 word, 100 days of 1,000 words, 100,000, but I was looking for 90,000 at the end of that 100 days because I knew there'd be a day or two in there where life just
Sure.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would stick to that. And I felt like I was writing crap the whole time I would write those 1,000 words at a time. And when I got all done and went back and looked, I was absolutely right. There was a lot of crap. And so, you
But you
know,
did it.
but I did it.
But you did it. Yes.
I
Yes.
had 90,000 words at the end of, just over 3 months to work with. Uh,
Wow.
and then I spend the next 4 to 5 months rewriting all of that. But it's so much easier to rewrite and mold and shape something that's already on the paper, even if it's bad, in my mind, than
Correct.
it is to go in and try to get everything perfect from scratch every day that you go in. And so that's an important part of my process.
Yeah. So I think there are two schools of thoughts. And I've had this conversation with other writers. Those who want to get it right the first time so they don't have to go back and change anything or edit, which I think is impossible. I've never met anybody who didn't go back at some point and change something or edit something. But, if they can't do it right, they don't want to do it at all if they can't get it right the first time. And then there are people who, like myself, and maybe a little bit like you, who my thought is just get it out, just do it, just put it on paper. You
Uh,
can always go back and change things later. But if you wait for, I always say that perfection is the enemy of progress. So if you don't at least try, get started, do it, even if it isn't perfect, it's not going to happen. It just isn't.
I
That's
agree.
what I think. What do you think?
I agree 100%. I think we're on board together with this one.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And that's what I have so many people who have come to me and said, well, I've been working on a book for the last several years. It's been like their lifelong project, right? They've been doing it since they were in high school, and here they are in their 40s or 50s, and they're saying, I just don't know, I don't think it's going to be ever going to be good enough. And I was like, you need to just finish it, have somebody look at it,
right.
clean it
But
up, whatever. And they're
some people can
paralyzed
do
with
it.
fear.
Some people, of course, you read about successful authors that is their process to get it right the first time. or research it to death. But like Laura Hillenbrand with Seabiscuit and Unbroken, I think it takes her 10 years to write a book.
Yeah.
By Barbara Kingsolver, I'm sure it takes more than a year to put hers out. But when you read them, you're like, oh, I'm not sure I could ever put something together like that, and you're impressed. So it can be different processes for different folks.
Yeah, yeah. And just like there are different writers, there are different readers. And so another element to that is I'm not going to please every reader out there either. Some people are going to read my stuff and say, this is the best thing I've ever read. It's really touched my life. Thank you so much for writing it. And other people are going to go, not so great. I
Right.
don't claim to be the most prolific writer. I never have. There's certainly writers out there who are far better than I am, but I did it. And I think that's kind of the message that we always try to portray on this show, is that anybody can write a book. You don't have to
Right.
wait for permission. You don't have to be a professional writer. You don't even have to have a certain education. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, 10th grade education, and he's just put out his first novels, or I'm not sure if it's a novel now that we're talking about it, but that's amazing to me. Anybody can write. You can. And
Yeah. Well, if you
certainly
can
some people
convince
need,
people if you can convince people that with this podcast, you're doing a great service to them.
because
So,
I just really feel that too many people just sit on their work for too long, or they have an idea in their brain, or they have a message that needs to get out, and they don't do it. I think people need to know that they can do it, and they don't need permission, and they don't need special skills. So, however, having said that, I think you probably do have some special skills, and there are some people who are just good writers. They're just naturally good at it. And I want to share a little bit about your book. So tell us a little bit about, we're going to share your website here in just a minute. Tell us about the books that you have written and published and what they're about.
okay. Well, we've already discussed the very first book, which will end up being the fourth book I've published when it finally comes out, the prequel. But the book that ended up being the first one I published is called Stable, and it's a thriller based out here in where I'm at in Buena Vista, Colorado, in the Upper Arkansas River Valley. We're right at the base of the Collegiate Peaks, which you can see behind me. We've got
Beautiful
14
area.
14,000 foot peaks within a 40-minute drive of our house. So
Wow.
uh, I'm on the search and rescue team out here as a volunteer,
Oh,
and
wow.
we get a ton of folks from the Front Range out here climbing our peaks, and sometimes they don't make it, sometimes they get hurt, sometimes they get lost, sometimes things happen in the river, the Arkansas River. It's a big river town, and
Mm-hmm.
so we get a lot of calls. We had 70 calls last year to go out and rescue people. And I joined as soon as I got to Buena Vista, and it's become an important part of my life here in the valley. And I've been on more than one mission where we're trying to figure out where the person's at or what exactly happened. And of course, my mind goes dark about, oh, what if this happened or what if that happened? And Stable is based off of one of those missions. We had
Oh,
a
boy.
a young 7-year-old girl who went missing at the base of Mount Columbia, the mountain that's behind me in this Zoom
Oh, my
video.
goodness.
And she was at her parents' house, which is right there at the base of it, and she just disappeared. And everyone, we called out the whole county, our SAR team in the south and our SAR team up here in the north, and we had helicopters and ATVs and drones, and big focus on the valley because there were a couple ponds close to the house, and we were concerned that she might have got close to the
Oh,
water.
wow.
The lost person behavior usually indicates that small children will not wander away uphill if they have an alternative, but we didn't rule that out, and so I was part of a team that was searching up the side of the mountains that you see,
Oh, my goodness.
and in the end, it turned out we found her 1,000 feet elevation above her house, huddled under a tree.
You're
And
kidding. Oh, my goodness.
and we were able to get her back home. But from that mission, I thought to myself, what would happen if a search and rescue team was out looking for a young girl, and they found a young girl, but it was a different girl than they were looking for,
Ooh.
and the book took off from there.
Oh, my
So
goodness. Yeah, exciting. That sounds like a fun story. So you're using real life experience to create these fictional novels then,
It helped, they say write what you know, and I
right? What
know
you know.
a bit about the search and rescue business. And the books, so it's a series, and the books aren't all about search and rescue missions. They're just usually inciting incidents or backstory to. They're actually thrillers with bad guys and good guys. And my main character, surprise, he's a retired Air Force veteran out in the
Imagine that,
Rockies.
right?
And,
Yeah.
right, but I've created him. He's 10 years younger. He's got just a tad more hair than I
Uh,
do, and probably a nicer guy. So,
so personality
yeah.
wise, is your character similar to you? I mean, other than
Well,
obviously your career experience, but
my character had a harder go in the Air Force than I did, and he's struggling coming out of that. And so he has relationship problems with his family. He's estranged from his family.
okay.
He has an uncomfortable relationship with alcohol, and he really moved out to these mountains to see if he could restart. And he wants to, which this is very close to real life, like many veterans. He wants to figure out how he can continue to serve. But in this particular case, he doesn't want to be the guy in charge because he had some bad experiences in the Air Force when he was in charge.
Wow. 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 Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, excuse me, pull this up on the screen for our viewers so they can see your website. If you go over to camtorrens.com, that's CAM, and I'll put this in the description of this video, but camtorrens.com books, then you can check Cam out. And this is stable, correct?
That's stable.
And then we have False Summit.
False Summit, right.
Yeah, okay. Wow. Awesome covers. Did you design
Hey,
your own covers?
no, I'm with an independent publisher out of Texas, and they put the book together and do all the covers and everything, but I get input on it.
Okay.
And so I was happy with what they did. So
Yeah, yeah, really good. So I think the one you just described to us about the person that goes missing, that is False Summit. Or
no,
no, that was Stable.
that was stable,
Okay,
correct,
I have them
correct.
backwards.
So
Okay.
yeah, False Summit. Do you want me to
Okay,
say
let's
a word or
yeah,
two
tell us
about
about
False
that one
Summit?
a little bit.
Right. So my youngest sons, we've got 6 kids, and there's just two, maybe two and a half left in the home. Got one of those 22-year-olds who's still trying to figure out where he's going to fit in. So
I think
he's
it's a whole
temporarily.
lot harder for young people these days to launch. It is hard out there with
It
inflation
is.
and everything. It's really, really hard for these young people to kind of get some traction to
Oh,
get
it is,
going. So
especially
yeah,
out here in these mountain towns.
yeah,
It's hard for just
yeah.
about anybody to afford to live out here.
Oh,
So, but my two youngest sons, they're ninth graders, and they were talking to me about my first book, and I told them I was looking for ideas for a second book, and I can't remember which one, but they were talking to the back seat about it, and then they leaned forward and they said, "We've got an idea," and I said,
uh,
"What?" And they said, "What if you're on a search and rescue mission, and one of the search and rescue searchers gets lost? Something happens to that person, and you don't know what happened." And I thought, "Huh." And
oh,
I stewed over that one, and that's what Fall Summit is about. So it's a
oh,
search and
interesting.
rescue mission where one of the search and rescue searchers doesn't come back.
Wow, fascinating, fascinating. So let's see. And these were released post pandemic
So post pandemic,
after.
so Stable was contracted in December of 2022 and
Okay.
released in July of 2023, and Fall Summit followed right after that.
Oh,
3 months later in October of 2023. And then I'll have a third one, Scorched, that comes out in August of 2024. And then I told you about the prequel
the
coming
prequel.
out.
Yeah, yeah,
So
you
they're
have a prequel to that.
all the
So
series.
exciting. Tell our audience a little bit about what that feels like when your book is finally out there for the world to view.
Well, I went in having finished that first book thinking that, geez, how could you improve on that? And 50 rejections later, I was like, well, obviously some way you can improve on it. And I wrote the second book, and the same thing happened. But in between, I also joined a critique group, and as soon as I did that, I'd been reading about writing for ever since I started this thing, really trying to study the craft. But when I got into the critique group with our local writers club, I really started to see a lot of the things that I was doing wrong. As far as, I'm writing genre fiction, and believe it or not, there's not written down rules, but there's ways that you write that people expect to read if they want to read your book. And
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I didn't know them. And so when I went back and looked at the first book that got 50 rejections, I'm like, wow, I'm glad I didn't try 70 or 80, because it would have been that many.
You would
Yeah,
have run
it
out.
definitely needed to be improved. And and so the critique group really helped, even though I wasn't getting any traction with that second book. The third book, um, Fall Summit, I kind of broke the rules about series, because the Stable was written in third person, past tense, and like it was greatly influenced by authors I admire, like C.J. Box or Craig Johnson, or mainly C.J. Box, as far as having a game warden protagonist and good guys, bad guys.
Oh my.
He writes third person, past tense. Um, but I also do a lot of reading of psychological thrillers, and I'm a big fan of first person present tense. So Fall Summit is written first person present tense, and they tell you, don't be changing up your tenses and your point of views in a series, because people get used to reading one way or another. I think in the Reacher books, he was written 22 books, and only one of them was in first person, and the rest were in third
Oh,
person. So the jury's out on whether I've screwed myself over on that, but
well, maybe
I've
they'll
kind of
just
shifted
be
the first.
maybe they'll just be standalones. You never know.
Right. Well, and they do read well. I've had people tell me they read well as a standalone. You pick up enough to figure out,
That's
stuff
good.
from previous books and after. So,
How fun. How
uh,
fun.
but but I so the third book was the one that I finally queried to Black Rose Writing. That's who I write with,
Mm.
and they liked it, and they said they wanted to offer me a contract, and I was all excited. And then I thought, well, I don't want to tick them off, but I wrote them back and I said, hey, would you take a look at the first book in the series, which is really the second, but I wasn't going to tell them that. And so I sent them Stable, and they hung on to that for a good 2 or 3 weeks. They weren't that excited about looking at another book.
Yikes.
And but they wrote back and they said, yeah, we think we could take this. Let me get this straight. You want Stable first, then Fall Summit. I said, that's it. And of course, I still didn't have the guts to tell them about the very first book. That wasn't until much
Oh,
later. And so that was how, I kind of got a 2 book deal with them. So,
wow. That's great. That is incredible. Most people don't
yeah.
end up with two books right off the bat, so that's pretty
Well,
exciting. But that moment, I think, when your book is published and you see that first copy in print and you get to share that with the world, for me, I think there is no greater moment. It's such a thrill to see your work in it, all the effort and all the time and all the mental energy and passion that you put into it finally come to fruition, and to know that other people are going to get to enjoy that, or hopefully other people will
right.
enjoy that.
No,
I
I
think it's just
completely
such an
agree.
exciting moment.
Yeah, it is. I actually had my boys were filming me when I opened up my first box of author copies that
Of
came in.
course. Yes. Yeah. That's exciting. How
Pretty
many
special.
copies did you get?
So I indie publisher, so they gave me 4 copies that I get, and then so if I want to sell books myself, out of my house or at the
Mhm.
local bookstores or whatever, I buy my books from my publisher at a discount and do it that way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 Oh, and
so
it's such a thrilling feeling.
I didn't
What
really
do you
answer your
on that
question.
frame there? Are you responsible for your own book marketing?
No, so Black Rose Writing markets the book. So they have a website where they market the book, and then I make the author makes the decision whether they want Black Rose Writing to market them wide, platforms besides Amazon, or Amazon specific, such that you can
Okay.
be on Kindle Unlimited. And
Yeah.
so that's the option I'm with right now, is the Amazon
Yeah, I think
only.
that this is just,
And that's just for digital.
yeah, for digital, of course.
Right.
But I think that's really the best option for people anymore. I know for me personally, if I'm thinking about a book or a purchase or I'm curious, but my go-to is Amazon. I think we just live in a day and age where everybody just goes to Amazon. So it makes sense to have the bulk of your marketing done over there. So
Right.
I'm assuming people can go ahead and find your book on Amazon then,
They
correct?
can. They
Yeah.
can. Yep. They can buy it on Amazon. If they're ordering hardcover, they can order it online through Barnes and Noble or Kobo,
Okay.
Bookshop, Walmart. Uh, it's all of it. The print copies available through that, and then the both the publisher put it out subcontracted for audio for both books, and they're available on Audible.
They are. Oh, that's awesome. So my husband listens to probably 1,000 books a year. I'm not exaggerating. He listens to a
Huh.
lot, and they're all audio books because he's a truck driver. So
Oh, great.
that's
Yeah.
what he does to pass time is he listens to books. And so, and yours is definitely in the genre that I know he would appreciate. So I'm definitely going to pass this on. And you said that's all on Audible. That's
It
on
is.
Audible.
It is
Okay.
correct.
Well, we're looking at your websites again, and this is your about page. And I just want to let the world know that if you're interested in Cam Torrens, this is his website. And it looks like you do some blogging too, right?
I do.
So
I've
this is all about you. Very interesting. You have quite an interesting past. And I would encourage people to go and jump on the email list. Jump on there so you can get some of the blogs. We're just going to show them that blog page. So what do you blog
uh,
about mostly?
so you can see that's a review of Yellowface. I do a newsletter once a month. So if you sign up on my website for the newsletter, that's what you get is a once a month newsletter.
Okay.
And generally the format of that is I tell you up front what's going on with my family, like a family trip or whatever, how my boys are doing in wrestling and what's happening with my books. I've got one or two links to a website I might have thought was neat. I'll have a blog post in there, and then I'll do just a paragraph review on 5 books I've read in the past month.
Okay.
Um,
All
and so
right.
that's it. It's not like you'll get a ton of uh,
Not a whole bunch of spam
emails because
mail.
I knew right, right. And uh, and I don't spend the newsletter trying to sell the books either. It's just kind of an update if you're interested in what's happening in the Torrens family.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
Um,
how fun. And you said you have 6 children.
Correct. So we've got so 4 of the 6 are young adults now. We had 2 the natural way, and 4 we've adopted from China and Russia
Oh,
throughout the years. On my tour in China, we adopted our 2 youngest
my
boys.
goodness.
So yeah, it was
Wow.
great. You know, other people when they were going to adopt, fly from the U.S. and stay at the hotel, we all hopped in our Honda Odyssey and
Yeah.
drove drove from Beijing down to Zhengzhou.
Oh my goodness. I was in Beijing 5 years ago. 5 years ago today, I was in Beijing at the airport, and I
Oh
got
wow!
off out of the airport to stay at a hotel. That was where I had a 13-hour layover on my way to Hong Kong,
Oh
and
wow!
really decided that it was kind of scary. I didn't think I wanted to stay there anymore. I don't
I tell
know.
you what, we loved living there.
Did
Our
you?
3 years. So I would never want to retire in China and live there forever.
Mm.
But fascinating country, incredible people, and completely safe if you're a family that's like worried about their kids wandering around or whatever, because it's so secure.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, if you want to make a political statement, it's one of the least safe people because they're gonna, they're
You
probably
know,
gonna come talk to you, but it's very secure.
here's what I know. Here's what I know. When we lived in Israel, we had people saying, "Oh my goodness, it's so dangerous, and you're going to be bombed, and you're going to have all this." But I'll tell you what, we never felt more safe in our lives. You talk about that security. There's security everywhere. You cannot go shopping without there being security. Everywhere you
Right.
go. And we lived right across from a military post, and I mean literally right across the street from the military post. And so there people walk down the street with their weapons slung over their shoulders, the military personnel, and you would think that we would feel scared, but I felt just the opposite. We felt it was peaceful. I think we just see stuff on the news, and
Right.
yeah, my thing with Beijing was just so many people. It was just so many people, and of course, not being able to speak the language, it was like I'm just so out of my element. But yeah, yeah. So that's kind of interesting. That's cool. So 6 kids, and how old are they? Where do they range?
So the youngest two are ninth graders right now, and then I've got a 20-year-old up at Colorado State. I've got a 22-year-old that's just graduated from Western Colorado University, looking for a Forest Service job, and I've got a son in the Army down at the base formerly known as Fort Hood in Texas. Can't remember what it's called now, and a daughter who is a in the Air Force out at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland.
Wow. And so your ninth graders are your inspiration because they're giving you novel ideas.
Right.
So have they
Yeah.
given you any more ideas? Do you have any more ideas when you're done with the ones that you're working on?
I've got plenty. I'm working on number 5 with the
Are
outline
you?
portion. So I'm at February 1st is the part where I start the 1,000 words a day
Oh boy.
again. So,
Oh, great.
and yeah, so this one, I briefly mentioned that I'd hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2018. I do a lot of hiking. And so the book 5's got something that's going to happen along the Colorado Trail.
Oh, that'll be that one I'm interested in. Yeah, that's home territory for me. So that'll be
All right.
really fascinating. So yeah, the one of the books that I'm currently working on, I really need to buckle down and finish. I'm not as structured as you are. I have so many irons in the fire that I have to wait until because once I sit down and start writing, it's like I word vomit. I just keep going and I don't stop until I
All right.
hit a stopping point. And I just haven't found the time here in the last few weeks to do that. But one of the books that I'm working on and need to finish is for my grandchildren. My one of my grandsons was the inspiration for this book, and so it's interesting how I think I always like to ask people, where did you get the idea for the book? Because it's interesting how we come up with those things. One of my books, I got the idea. I was driving truck years ago, and was listening to a radio program, and at the time I had just stopped doing some business coaching stuff that I had been doing and went to truck driving,
Mhm.
and I was listening to a podcast show, and it's like, oh, I really need to write a book about that. And that's what I did. So we get ideas and inspiration from all different places, I think, as writers. I think it's
Right.
what to me is so fascinating about you, Cam, is that you've taken your real life experience and you've turned it into something that people are fascinated with. I think there's for me, you're talking about finding this what 7-year old little girl, 7. Is that
Right.
what you said? 7.
Yeah.
And that's a human interest story that we all want to know the outcome of that. Everybody wants to know how that turned out. And so when you put that into a fiction form, it's of course you're going to have people who are on the edge of their seat wanting to find out how the story turns out.
I think so. I did want to say, when you said you're not as structured as I am, you don't think. I did want to make the point for those folks out there that are thinking about, trying to put a book together or putting a book out or trying to figure it all out. The most important thing and unexpected thing that's happened to me through this whole process is the interaction with other writers. And believe me, if a structured guy like myself had tried to do this all by myself, it would have been a structured book that no one wants to read. And it's been the creative people that I've been around that have like kind of smoothed out all my edges on the stuff, and I think made me a better writer. And I've got this cohort of local writers. I talked about the critique group here,
Mm-hmm.
and then now with this indie publisher, they have about 400 or 500 writers under
Oh,
contract with them, and we have a private Facebook page where we interact and share
nice. That's
ideas, read each
exciting.
other's stuff, and it's changed my life. It really has. I can't even I can't imagine trying to be a writer by myself. I
Yeah.
would not recommend that for anybody. I know there's people that can do it, but I would not recommend it for anybody because you're going to miss out. It may not make your writing any better. I think it will, but it'll make your life better to interact with people that are different than you, but trying to do the same thing, that are
100%.
writing
Yes.
different things than you write. Um,
It was the very first time I ever wrote a book. I had no desire to write a book. I had no desire to become an author. I didn't know. I mean, I wrote well in school, when I had to. I got wonderful grades in English and those types of things, but I never saw myself as writing a book. But my business coach said, if you want more speaking engagements, you really need to write a book. So I did. And it was the most stupid, ridiculous thing I'd ever written. And, my business coach never even looked at it, never even looked at it. Um, and it's so stupid. I'm embarrassed by it. I didn't know anything about editing, that I could get an editor. I knew nothing. I was on YouTube looking at tutorials to try to figure out, how do I get my book on Amazon, and I really just wanted to get it printed so I'd have something to take with me when I did speaking engagements.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then that book came in the mail and I got the bug and I said, I think I can do this again. So my next book was a book I told you about that I was inspired by a podcast that I had listened
All right.
to. And that was actually a really good book. But I'm saying that to say that it was a very lonely process because I did have questions. Does that really sound right? Does that sound okay? I hired a friend who I think I paid like $40 for her to read it for me. And the only reason I asked her to look it over and see if she could find any like spelling errors, that type of stuff, is because I knew she was a reader and she liked to read a lot and she liked that type of genre. So she looked it over, is it the best piece of literature out there? Absolutely not. But it's not bad. I mean, it's not horrible. But I remember feeling really lonely, and I would get online to learn a little bit more. And I would see that there's writers groups and there's writers clubs. And I lived in a very teeny town at the time, and that there was nothing that existed for me there, which is one of the reasons why I felt it was so important to bring this channel to YouTube, because there needs to be a space where you can get on YouTube and find all sorts of how-tos, how to publish a book, how to format a book, how to get your book on Amazon, how to find an editor, how to illustrate a book, all of those how-tos. But nobody's really talking about the process of writing and what it's like to be a writer. I think I'm going to ask this: did you have any preconceived notions of what it meant to become an author? Did you have this vision in your head of what that was going to look like, and does reality match that?
So I I honestly had heard all the stories about people who start writing and think they're going to be a best-selling author and quickly find out that they're not. Um, I honestly went in thinking, I'll probably be the exception. I will be the bestseller. and and it didn't take long. I mean, within the first couple of years, I was like, first off, within the first couple of years, I realized what I've gotten into. I didn't give the craft the respect it was due, uh, uh, because of how much work it takes to do it right. Um, so I was disillusioned, but I didn't let it stop me. I didn't mention this before, but when after the first year, my wife says, "Are you going to keep doing this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to be a writer." And she goes, "How long?" And she goes, "Because we got other stuff we need to do too." And I go, 10 years, 10 books. And she goes, "That's it?" And I haven't told her yet that I have my fingers crossed behind my back, but that's what she's given me. And so I'm just gonna give it the shot from now until then. I
There you
now
go.
uh, I'm now still would like to be a uh, a best-selling author. By the terms, best-selling, Fall Summit actually hit #1 on Amazon for 15 minutes one day. So, in the group I am, you could call yourself a best-selling author, but I don't. Um, I, I would like to be on somebody's list someday as
Yeah.
a best-selling
Yeah.
author. I'm
New York
unsure.
Times best-selling, isn't that the one we all aspire to, right?
I can't guarantee that's going to happen,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to stop because one thing I didn't realize when I started was how much fun I was going to have. And so I'm really loving it.
It is so much fun. And that's just it. I think you really summarize that. I think after about my second or third book, I was like, I'm getting pretty good at this. Maybe I'll be a bestseller one of these days. And then I listened to so many other people who feel the same way. And it's like, no, I think I'm just like everybody else. I'm just kind of in there. But one thing I will say, when you share the story of your books, I want to put this up on the screen again for our audience. When you share about, let's go back up to the top here and go look on your books. Here we go. When you talk about them, you know what comes to my mind is I see a movie being made out of these. And not all books are meant to be movies, but you've got that element there, that story there, that human interest thing that can be sensationalized. And I think that you might have a movie in these. What do you think?
Oh,
Have you thought about it?
uh, I haven't thought about it, but if you know any screenwriters or agents, point them my way.
That I can't help you with, but yeah. But I just see it just
I
it has
appreciate
it just I don't know, it just rings of that. I interviewed somebody by the name of Daniel Finkel. In fact, he was my first guest on a book, and his book is one that definitely 100% is, and he used to be a screenwriter, so I absolutely see that one making it to the screen someday. And you can't say that about all books. I don't think all books are meant to be movies, but I'm listening to you tell this story and it's like I'd like to see that in movie form. I'm a movie person. I'd rather watch a movie than a book, than read a book, just
it.
in the interest of time. Or I'll listen to an audio book because I don't feel like I have the physical time to sit down and read. I'm
Right.
just so busy all the time. But anyway, so I want to say one thing here. I want to remind our audience of your website, camtorrens.com. Go there. You can also find these books on Amazon and Audible if you're interested in the audiobook, which is probably where I'm going to go. So Fall Summit Stable, get them. They look fantastic. I'm really excited about
Thanks.
those.
Yeah.
And before we go, what advice would you personally leave to anybody who is interested in writing, who's maybe brand new to writing, that maybe they're a little nervous about it or excited? What would you say to them?
Uh, I would say commit to writing something, whether you're going to write a book or an essay or a short story, commit to it. And when you're prioritizing between trying to learn how to do the best writing or trying to make it a habit, making it a habit is more important than doing your best writing. Because if you can train yourself to sit down and write, no matter how you feel, you can figure out all that other stuff later. The habit is what's important.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it. That's why I like Nike. Just do it. Right.
Just do it. Right. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on here today. I really, really appreciate you being here. I
I
thank you for
appreciate
that.
you. Thanks so much for having
Yeah.
me. You're an excellent host.
Oh, thank you. I like hearing that. So, listen, once again, go on over to Cam's website. That's Cam Torrens. I'm going to put that on the screen just one more time. I don't want anybody to miss this. That's camtorrens.com. You know what? Let's show him your home screen real quick. Let's do that. And make sure you check out, he's got some blogs on there. Sign up for the once a month newsletter. Um,
Oh, that's a picture of Grandma Liz. That's my
is that your
97,
grandmother?
97-year-old grandmother.
Oh,
My wife and I dashed down for a visit 2 weeks ago. So
oh, yeah. Well, I could tell this was around Christmas time. So, yeah, that's
I was
exciting.
reading her a chapter of Stable while I was down there.
Oh, really? Oh, how nice. And so the book reviews, everything. Yeah, jump on here. Pictures of the kids wrestling. Okay, Black Rose Writing.
Those are the
Definitely. Okay,
books
so these are books that you have read and some that you've just
currently reading and
finished.
just
So,
finished.
so do you rate the books that you rate by like stars or
I do. I rate books on BookBub, Goodreads, and Amazon.
okay. Okay. All right. Wow. I didn't pay too much attention to this page, to be honest, because I was more interested in just looking at your books. So this is kind of exciting. Jump on
Yeah,
over
you'll
to
see.
Cam.
Oh,
I'm
go.
sorry.
Oh, I was saying when on those books like I'm reading, you'll see a couple covers, that look really boring. It's what those are. If you scroll down one, the Come and Get Me and Catherine's Remarkable Road Trip, those are advanced reader copies from writers that I write with Black Rose Writing,
Oh,
and I'm reading their books. They won't be published for one is 6 months from now, and another one's maybe 10
very
months from now.
exciting.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's one of the advantages, I think, to connecting with other writers is getting to explore other people's work too.
Yeah. Oh
It's
yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Getting out of your comfort zone as far as genres.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that can be a little tricky sometimes. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard if it's
yeah,
something you think you're not interested. But it's funny because some of the things that I thought I wouldn't be interested in, and I read them because I know the author, I end up just falling in love with. It makes a difference.
absolutely.
It makes a
I
difference when
you're
you get to learn a
exactly
little something
right.
about the author.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, again, it's been a pleasure having you here. I thank you so much. Listen, what I'd like to tell you all out there, if you have a book inside of you, if you're thinking about writing, if you're not sure what to do next, just keep doing it. Just keep writing. I thank you for being with me and Cam today on a book, and I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless you.